Well, welcome. I hope party was great after party yesterday, and it didn't make it too hard for anyone to get up in the morning, because I'm not a morning person at all, so I'm always happy when I have to open a day of a conference. Usually, you can see me on the stage giving a technical session. So I usually talk about coding, about lessons learned, about the tools that I built. But in the last couple of years, we had such a big shift towards AI. And it became so deeply integrated in all aspects of our life and everything that we do. Usually when such hype happens, we don't have time at all to properly learn how to use those tools and understand what impact it has on our lives. Exactly for this reason, I decided to dive in more, not into how I can use the tool, because about that we already had a lot of sessions. They were super amazing. So I didn't try to do anything better, because we already know a lot about instructions, about prompt and skills and agents. All those things are about how can we get effective use of AI, right? What I want to talk about is the ethical paradox of AI. So what is actually standing behind it? In all those black boxes, how does those system works from the perspective, from more like human perspective? So we will be navigating the dark side of a bright future today. We will see how bright will it get, but I will stay optimistic. I will say a couple of words about myself, so you know who's actually talking to you. My name is Olena Borzenko. I am originally from Ukraine. I'm based in Germany. I'm working in a company called Celi as a consultant and GitHub tech lead. I have a degree in applied physics. I'm also a public speaker, as you can tell, software developer from my past, and I'm Microsoft MVP. What else you can see on the screen is the magazine article. So I also write blog posts and magazine articles. But this one is every 3 months my company publishes a magazine. Everyone from the company, employees that have ideas to share or things to share, they write articles. And this one I'm very proud of, because that was the story that I told about my art projects. So I always inspire people and encourage not to only build software and spend time on all those software development practices and patterns and architectures and things, but also use our knowledge for great things, for building, creating stuff in real life as well, using it for our hobbies. And that's exactly what this article is about. So I combine art with technologies, with machines, with tools, and I do it as a hobby and also as a side hustle, and I do speak about it at some conferences as well. So hopefully maybe at the next edition, so we're in Krakow or in Prague, I will get a chance to talk about it as well. But now we're gonna get back to the more serious topic, which is AI, of course. When we build in AI systems, what do we expect from it? We do expect it to be explainable. We do expect it to be robust and have transparency, right? We want it to be easily explainable. We want to understand how it works. We do also want our data to be private, protected. We don't want to have any data infiltrations. We don't want our data to be shared and used for training AI models, right? And we also want all decisions to be fairly weighted. So we don't want to have any biases. We don't want to have any unfair treatment in our data. But, so how can we achieve that? First of all, we have to understand all the underlying issues and problems when we're working with AI systems. Making our application, all of this, so those are ethical principles of AI. Integrating this in our application is great, but we also have to understand that some things Do I have to do it like this? Is there an issue with?
It falls.
Oh, it falls. Oh, because it was not on my ear. So
Yeah.
now it should be better.
Yeah, but with your earring, since
I can take it. I don't think that anyone see my earring from the stage, so sorry for that. No, all good. It's all my earring. I'm very sorry. Is it better now? Okay. Yeah, because I cannot hear myself that well how I speak, how I talk. So, where was I? Yeah. So when we talk about all those principles, with that, we didn't really have enough time to learn and understand all that, right? So we do remember a couple of years ago. I mean, couple of well, like now it's what 4, 5. ChatGPT was released, and in a record time, it reached 100 million users in 2 months after launch. So this is considered to be a fastest growing consumer internet app ever. And that's great. That was amazing success, right? The problem was that so many people get access to such a powerful tool in a very short period of time, and they started using it widely and actively, and they didn't learn how to properly use it. So I mean, honestly, I'm sure that that's going to be the case for all of you. We are coming from tech, so we do understand how some things work, and sometimes we try to validate the output, so we don't trust technologies blindly. But you can even raise your hand. How many of you have friends that say like, oh, I asked ChatGPT and it says that, and it told me how to treat my illness, and it told me like what to do with my life, and I just blindly follow it. I have a lot of friends like this. So I see it as a very dangerous direction that we are moving, especially with ChatGPT. So that's basically a recipe for disaster. And this is a quote from Sriram Natarajan. To combine the ease of creating harmful or misguided content with just a few text prompts with the power of social media to spread it. So that's the recipe of disaster. When I saw this quote, I couldn't agree more. Because, I mean, right now, I think the biggest problem that I have with AI, I mean, all of us probably have either Instagram or TikTok or some of the social medias. When I watch it, I'm getting severely annoyed with the amount of content that is generated by AI. And this is some of the things that I can recognize, some things I cannot. And of course, I don't trust blindly, and I validate, but some things, you know, they get into your head, they sit in your head like it's a real information that can be completely nonsense. Some things we can control and filter out, some things we cannot, and that's also a risk of it. But social media's two main concerns is about how it manipulates mental state of people, right? Because it's not only spreads misinformation, but it also manipulates our emotional state, our desires, our lives, everything. And how easily a social, like mass of people, how easily we are as society being manipulated by this as well, moving in the wrong directions because we are being basically fooled. So how easily can AI be used to spread false information? We already have an idea about this, and this is a huge red flag in many, many different aspects. And there's a couple of examples about the deepfakes and impersonations that happened in the past. So one of the examples is the deepfake impersonation targeting Senator Ben Cardin, and it was related to a high-ranking Ukrainian official. There was a deepfake of the person. I mean, luckily, it was just an incident of an attempt, but you can imagine how harmful could have that been if that would really go through. There's a lot of impersonations of artists and singers, and there is, of course, impersonations that are happening targeting big businesses, and some of them lead to really big losses for like 25 million loss. All those great things become possible because of AI tools. Because of tools that are so powerful became available to us at our disposal. One of the examples is Stable Diffusion. It was developed with Comfys, with Stability AI in a collaboration. It was created somewhere between 2021, 2022. Basically, if you have enough computational power on your computer, enough CPU, GPU, you can generate whatever content without any rules and any restrictions. There will be some examples of pictures generated with Stable Diffusion later on, but I mean, you can also imagine how much harmful content was produced on the internet using Stable Diffusion. I'm not saying anything against it. It's great when we open source tools, but in this case, it also became a very powerful weapon against ourselves, against humanity, basically. So what are the ethical issues surrounding AI? Let's summarize it. Let's see the whole list of problems, of aspects that we have to keep in mind, especially when we're working with AI, when we're building applications. The first of all is a bias and discrimination. Then we have to talk about transparency and accountability, creativity and ownership. Then there's going to be social manipulation and misinformation. I mean, this is a very big topic, but also very important. Also privacy, security, and surveillance. Job displacement, very hot topic, especially, I think like a couple of days ago, I read not an article, but a post. I'm not sure if that's the real one or it's just it was just a joke on the internet. First, people are firing people because agents can generate code instead of them, and then because of all those changes with the pricings, people keep hiring people back because now it's too expensive to have agents in AI, and now they're hiring junior developers to write boilerplate code. I mean, I find it very funny. It's like innovation but backwards, but this is also related to the topic of job displacement. And then the last one is the lethal autonomous weapon systems. So, I mean, sometimes now you can imagine I'm from Ukraine, so I do see a lot of news that are related to the usage of AI, the weapons and war and all sorts of things. So sometimes I do feel myself, well, not myself, but the whole world is moving into the direction of becoming a sci-fi movie or something like this. So 2 years back when I was, or maybe like 1 year back, when I was giving this session at a different conference, when I was talking about this part, like this last section, I felt like I'm talking some kind of a nonsense because we are too far from that. Now it doesn't feel like this because there were already some news about usage those autonomous weapon systems already in practical, in real life, already was some testing, already was some operations happening. So I feel like I should keep talking about that and maybe even investigate it a bit deeper because it is a very, I think it's even more dangerous than social manipulations and misinformation. So let's start from, sorry for that. So let's start from bias and discrimination. Let's start from different type of biases that we have. We have 3 of them, at least 3 of them I'm going to mention today. First one is training data bias. So we all know that AI systems are being trained on a massive amount of data, right? This data wasn't public internet. This data was created by us, by people that have emotions, that have some sort of certain social predispositions, certain opinions, and all this data was used to train all those models. So a lot of biases are embedded and integrated in LLMs, and they come as a bug, right? No one filters this information out because also in some cases it's quite relative to understand what bias is, because bias is not a bad thing at all. If you look at the definition of bias, it's just disproportionately weighted factors. That's what creates bias. So it can become integrated in your algorithms and applications like, for example, facial recognition or hiring AI systems. They can introduce biases because of over or underrepresented groups of people. And it doesn't have to be on purpose, of course. So there is if your company has, I mean, that's a very typical case, but if your company has historical data of successful hires, and in the past, this information, those documents included gender, nationality, I mean, like any source of data that is absolutely irrelevant, then right now, if you will be using that kind of systems, some great candidates that could have been an amazing fit for your job will be filtered out because of a gender, because of nationality, because maybe they're coming from different background, because this data was included in your data set, and AI decided that it's an important information to take into account when making a decision. Another one, next one is the algorithmic bias. Algorithmic bias is a little bit different. It can also be caused by flawed training data, and can result in algorithms producing the same error. If it's not error, then in some cases, because of improper data, because of flawed data, it can exaggerate some of the biases and then just inherit them from the data. So this is called algorithmic bias because, yes, the data is the problem, but the way how we build algorithms and how they weight this data is the main issue here. So the third one and the last one is the cognitive bias, and cognitive bias is about us. It's a human factor. We can be inevitably influenced by our experiences and our preferences, and even if we make sure that we take training data and we have all groups represented from different ages, from different nationalities, and then we make sure that our algorithms are perfect. Let's imagine this case. There is no guarantee that we're not going to have any cognitive bias, because we as developers, we can say, I mean, even I can do this mistake. I can say, yes, I have the perfect data. I took data from like all European countries, but I didn't take into account that there is more than Europe on this earth, right? So if I don't take enough information from all the regions, from Asia, from India, from America, this will be cognitive bias. It's not enough to have your data balanced, but it's also important to have data sets from different backgrounds, from different regions. So this is one of the examples of a cognitive bias. Yeah, so it will be also, the result will be basically the same. So you will reach to more or less the same point. All those three things, they will not be, you will not feel them that much if you're working with AI on your daily tasks, in your routine life. So when you're building small applications or some simple applications, you will not feel this. But there was a case, when exactly those biases in training data those biases were very harmful. They not only led to mistreating a lot of people, but also a lot of people died because of this. The person that you can see on the screen, he's a principal research scientist at the MIT Laboratory for Computational Physiology. His name is Leo Anthony Celi. The article that you can see on the screen, called "Joining the Battle Against Healthcare Bias," was created by him after the incident they realized during the pandemic. So we all remember this time pandemic, right? So now, there are so many events happening that sometimes we keep forgetting about those huge things that happened in the past. During pandemic, because of training data, not because of training data, because of the wrong data sets, they were mistreating a lot of patients in a hospital. And I will show on the next slide exact quote exact quote from his article. But first of all, I want to say a few words about this paper that he wrote. So this is basically a lesson learned from the really bad experience that led to death, that led to mistreating people. And after this, he realized how important data is and how important to have it properly weighted, represented from all groups, minorities, and have no biases. So he basically made a call to action to all industries, especially that are coming from healthcare. And he asked for 3 key changes that we all have to do, as a humanity, as people. The first key change that has to happen, and it's not only related to healthcare, but just in general, that they have to make clinical data of all kinds openly available with the proper privacy safeguards. Because if public data is being used for training, this data have to be available, because without having data, you will not be able to make sure that you don't have any biases in your system. And you as an individual or business cannot gather a proper amount of data only from your resources, your surrounding. Another key aspect was to fully exploit this open data with multidisciplinary collaborators using clinicals, academic investigators, and industry. And the third key was focused on varying needs of populations across every country, and to empower the experts there to drive advances in treatments, right? So it's not only about data, it's not only about making sure that there is a collaboration happening, but also making sure that it's happening across all the regions. And this is what actually happened. This is a quote from him. We have been undertreating individuals of color because the nurses and the doctors have been falsely assured that their patients have adequate oxygenation. So I read the whole paper, and I'll just shortly explain you what it means. They had machines in hospitals, they were connected to people, and they were measuring the level of oxygen in their blood. And it was showing, like, basically green check, everything is fine, this level is adequate, so people are fine. And people, individuals of color, they built differently. They needed to have much higher, not much, but enough to cause harm, higher level of oxygen. So as the result, the consequences of that, a lot of people didn't have enough oxygen. Some of them died, especially when there were people of older people or kids, so they didn't handle the pressure, the illness, of course, COVID, the consequences, and it was a lethal cases. Those were lethal cases. So computers will be picking up all our unconscious implicit biases when we make decisions, and we have to keep that in mind. Another case was, I find it funny, when I tell this story to some of my friends that are not from tech, they're like, no way. They think that I'm just joking when I say that. But, so there is a person called Jo Bolamvini. She's an MIT lab researcher, and she was working with the facial recognition technology. So she wrote a whole article about it, and it was in the news, that the robot had issues detecting her face unless she was wearing a white mask, right? So facial recognition system was much worse for women of color than white men. And this is the result. So this is when she was presenting it. So she was wearing like the white mask that I would wear in the morning, like it will be my facial routine. That she had to wear that, so the technology will be able to recognize her. The reason for that, not because technology couldn't detect something, but because those biases that were integrated in data sets. Simply, when people were developing this technology, most people on the team were white men. And I don't have anything against white men, don't take me wrong, but that was the problem. If the whole team would be people of color, probably could have been the same problem, but other way around. In this case, the whole team were white men. They were making tests on themselves. So when she started working with this technology, she had troubles because she was a woman of color and she had different facial properties. When technologies like this are being deployed in law enforcement settings, that's when it becomes not only a joke, but becomes a real problem. So we will talk about surveillance cameras and all those things a little bit later, but this is also a few examples of biases that were in the industry. So I think all of us heard some companies integrating AI technologies, integrating all those like automatic hiring processes in their companies. And there was a lot of incidents, like a lot of really bad news coming up when the AI tools were showing biases and ranking job applicants. And then when if you didn't belong to a certain group of people because of historical reasons, you will not hire it, or maybe because you were from different nationality or different gender. So all those things, I mean, there's many, many more. I think this list will be way too long to even show it in the whole presentation of that kind of cases, but that's what happened. So right now, I want to make a very short demo, and I hope it's going to work now. Nope, okay. I have to exit my presentation now, so. And if you do it like this, yes, this works. Okay. Yes, so I want to show you this site. This was an experiment. That was related to biases that are integrated in data sets, right? And speaking about Stable Diffusion, so this is Stable Diffusion's text-to-image model, and it amplifies stereotypes about race and gender, and that's exactly what was this experiment about. So I'll be just scrolling down, and we will see the details. So I will read together with you if you don't see it. So the experiment included 5,100 images of AI-generated people. For each image, they calculated an average color from the parts of the image that made up facial skin, right? So they took a face and they calculated the skin range that was present in those images. And that's what you can see. Those are the results. Based on that average color, each face was classified into one of the 6 categories, and you can see from the lighter to the darker skin color. So types 1 through 3 are widely considered lighter skin, and 4 to 6 as darker skin. So we understand, we set the base here. And that's where it gets interesting. When I first saw this, I was like, wow, I knew that data sets can be biased, but not to that extent. I mean, that was ridiculous for me to see. The analysis found that image sets generated for every high-paying job were dominated by subjects with lighter skin tones, while subjects with darkened skin tones were more commonly generated by prompts like fast food worker and social worker, right? And that's what you can see. So you can see that there is an architect, there is lawyer, CEO, politician, judge, engineer, doctor, and then we can see low-paying occupations coming from teacher. I mean, actually, I am surprised because in some countries, teachers are considered high-paying jobs. But I mean, I guess not for people that are making this experiment, and also not in that region. So, and then we have on the same level as housekeeper, cashier, janitor, dishwasher, fast food worker, and social worker. I mean, I find it also upsetting that the teacher, which is such an important job, is being valued on the same level as as jobs like dishwasher, for example. But that's a different story. And then if we move further, so this categorization by gender tells a similar story. Same principle. High-paying occupations, and you can see dark green color is a man and light green color is a woman, and then ambiguous is a gray one. So we can have, again, like all things, including engineers, mostly a man, right? And then we have janitor is also a man, and dishwasher, fast food worker, and as we go to housekeeper, it's getting more to a woman. Historically, I don't find it wrong because yes, it is a stereotype. I mean, if you say housekeeper, if I say housekeeper, in your heads, you probably will have an image of a woman, maybe even like mid-age or like more to the older age, because that's a stereotype that we have in the head. But we cannot afford having this in our applications. Those stereotypes are in our heads, and we have to deal with this. But when we build applications, we have to make sure that they are fair and not inheriting our own stereotypes, right? So, and then if we scroll more, so when considering bias in terms of both skin tone and gender, men with lighter skin tones were represented the majority of subjects in every high-paying job, including politicians, lawyers, doctors, and CEOs, and so on. I mean, you got the point, right? It doesn't matter how much we try to fight biases and discriminations, but that's the reality that we live in, and that's the reality that we have to keep in mind all the time, especially when we're building things. So by aligning the faces generated for each occupation based on location of eyes and mouth, that's basically the results that they get. Also color-wise, so I'll move a bit like this. We can see the resemblance for the top row, and then we can see the resemblance for the bottom row. So I will scroll a little bit more because there was also a nice example of some more generated pictures, and they being renewed every couple of minutes. So we can see, so there's a judge. This one is probably either politician or CEO. And we can see like they are women, like one or two, like here's 1, 2, 3, and then the rest are men. So that's the thing that we have to keep in mind. And I will switch back to the presentation right now. So that's the experiment I wanted to show because I find it very interesting. We know about this stuff, right? That's not a new thing. We understand that those biases exist, but when you see it in front of you, the actual impact that it has and the size of it, so what are actual numbers, then it's becoming fascinating because then that's the point when you're like, oh, okay, so maybe I should pay more attention to this topic. The next one is transparency and accountability that we're going to talk about. And this one is not any less important in this case as a training data, because the purpose of this is to ensure that systems are understandable and they allow users to see how decisions are being made, spot biases or errors, and challenge outputs if needed. And when we're talking about transparency and accountability, it also comes to mind who is responsible for what. So who is, basically, who has to take care of all the consequences that are being created by those AI systems that were developed. And in this context, we will be talking about AI versus XAI or XAI. It's basically explainable AI and responsible AI. So the first one is responsible AI and the second one is explainable. So how do they relate to each other? Explainable AI and responsible AI, they have very similar objectives and they have to work together. They can work together and they have to work together because the main difference between them is actually not that far. When we're talking about explainable AI, it looks at the results after they've been computed, and explainable AI tries to explain how did we get to this point. Responsible AI looks at AI at the planning stages, and it makes sure that outputs will be will not have any biases, will be fairly weighted. It makes sure that it is responsible before the result was generated. So it's not about dealing with consequences, but it's making sure that we have a right output from the very start. And it can work like this, but only in a perfect world. So we always have problems and issues that we find afterwards. And even if we take an amazing team, spend a lot of time building a system, it's still gonna be a case that we will find out some problems afterwards, because we cannot take everything into account. Even if you will be using AI to write some applications and systems, even AI cannot take all things into account. So responsible and explainable AI, one makes sure that the results that are being produced, they are correct from the beginning, but that is not possible to always achieve that. So when we do have problems, we have to be able to explain it, to trace it back, to understand where the problem lays. If that's our data, is that about algorithms, or maybe there are some different reasons for this? So let's have a look at the definition just real quick, just to summarize this. So responsible AI often arrives at the result using an machine learning algorithm, but the architects of the AI systems do not fully understand how the algorithms reach that result. So in this case, we are talking about black boxes. A lot of AI systems and algorithms, they are black boxes. So in some cases, people understand how algorithms behave and how do they make those decisions. But in some cases, they do not. And it's not because they are irresponsible, but that's just simply because how the technology works. And then on the other side, we have the explainable AI that implements specific techniques and methods to ensure that each decision made during the machine learning process can be traced and explained. So there is a couple of techniques that can be that we can use to make sure that we meet all those requirements. So we make sure that we have explainable AI and responsible AI. First one is the prediction accuracy, which is basically a key component of how successful the use of AI is in everyday operation. So to do this, we can run simulations and compare explainable AI outputs. And we can compare it to results in the training data sets. So we can have certain data set that we compare towards. We get the outputs. We make sure that they're actually similar or expected. And by that, we predict the accuracy. And again, when we run this data, when we run those results towards training data sets, we need to make sure that we represent all groups, all minorities, all data fairly and equally. And only then this accuracy actually makes sense, because then it means something and not only, we're actually very close to the results, but results and data in general was, for example, flawed. Traceability is another key technique for accomplishing explainable AI. And this is achieved, for example, by limiting the way decisions can be made by setting up narrow scope for machine learning rules and features. And then the last one is the decision understanding. This is a human factor. Many people have a distrust in AI. I mean, understandable, of course. But yet we have to work with it effectively. And then in some cases, we really have to, especially with the pace, how fast we are moving with AI. We do use it anyway, but we do have a distrust. So to make sure that we use it correctly, we need to understand how some decisions are making, and that's why we need to learn, and not only to trust it blindly, but also to learn how it works. Education is the key point here. A lot of companies, especially now with the AI, I think. With this shift, a lot of companies, what they first did, they didn't invest in learning, they invest in building applications with AI. So we also want to be AI. We want to be AI first, we want to be agentic first, we want to be this, that, and that. And I'm personally, I'm giving a lot of trainings. I'm giving a lot of trainings to workshops, trainings, enablement sessions to different customers, to different companies. And I'm being surprised sometimes how people say, yes, we have experience for like 2 years, everyday usage of AI, and then I sit down with teams and I talk to them and they don't understand basics. They simply use it because they get access to the tool, but they never, and I consider it also employee problem, not only personal employer problem, employer problem and not only employee problem. Because when you're being forced as an employee to use certain technology because of circumstances. There can be various reasons, but you are not given enough time and resources to invest and learn. Then you get to those results when you're becoming very comfortable with the technology that you don't understand how it works and don't know how to use it properly. And then, you're making basically a lot of mistakes and misusing it. So education is very important. And of course, not only education from the perspective of how to use it, but also understand what are underlying problems and issues we have in like LLMs, the tools that already been provided to us, not the ones that we built. The next topic is creativity and ownership. Of course, I mentioned from the beginning of the session that I do art. I'm an artist since the last couple of years. And I do use AI, I do use technology in my art as well. I don't do generative art as you think of it. So I don't generate pictures with Midjourney or DALL-E or some other tools, but I do use LLMs and AI to generate some things, some configurations, some values. So it's a part of my system. I do algorithmic art. So I write my own algorithms, my own equations for this. I mean, not my own, but I use algorithms to generate sketches. And for this, to add certain unpredictability to the results, to outputs that I have, I use LLMs for generating some of the values. Then the things I generate, I mean, of course, I use also machine tools like CNC machine to then make them as a real art piece. And there's a lot of also manual work and things. But when it comes to AI, the topic of ownership and creativity is very close to me for those reasons. So I'm just explaining you all this so you understand that art is not just something that I like and then generate some pictures, but it's actually something that I do as my side job, side activity, side occupation. So when it comes to art, we need to understand a couple of things. So even if you don't do art at all, and even if you have nothing to do with creativity, but you do use tools, I mean, especially for image generation, you still have to understand where is this image coming from, what data was used for training models to generate that kind of images, and you are responsible then to use this data, those images, this content that is being created wisely. Because I mean, a lot of artists, they suffered badly when AI became publicly available. They suffered badly because no one wanted to buy art anymore, right? You can go to ChatGPT or Midjourney and then say, generate me a picture in DALL-E or Van Gogh style or any other style, and then you have an art piece hanging on your wall without any effort. So this is how you diminish and then you take away value of things that were being created by people, putting emotions in there, they spending their time, because this is the same job of making art as any other, so it shouldn't be valued any less just because we have available tools for this, right? And that's exactly what this case is about. Getty Images is suing an AI art generator. Getty Images is the world's largest image library. And so you can see that the whole situation was happening in 2023. Image generator, AI image generator used all those images, the whole library, for training data, and then of course, I mean, that caused a lot of harm to those artists that were posting. I mean, not only artists, but I mean artists including that were posting images to this library as well. So when the painter or artist completes the painting, they own it, right? But what about the ownership when it comes to AI generated pictures? Do you own it if you generated it or not? I mean, honestly, no. So if you generated a picture with AI, this is of course a very sensitive, or I would say, it's not a simple topic because it very much depends on how you generate it, but it doesn't have a human factor, so it doesn't consider to be owned by AI or owned by you. So another case was a person called John Allen used AI image synthesizer called Midjourney, we all know what it is, to generate this winning art piece or image. And then he sent this to the competition and won a first place. And the competition was about digital art and not AI art. So he wanted to make a statement with this. he wanted to make a statement using artificial intelligence artwork, and of course he had a lot of bad comments. He had a lot of, well, not positive reactions, because a lot of people, they master skills of digital art for years, and then the person took a tool that Midjourney paid some money for the license, took a couple of hours to learn how to generate it, and then was staying on the same level as other highly skilled digital artists. So then we have this inequality. We have this unfairness, right, that's coming and raising because of those tools, because of those tools being publicly available. So what can we do about this? There is something called CC license. It's a Creative Commons license that gives everyone from individual creators to large institutions a standardized way to grant the public permission to use of their creative work under copyright law. So some artists, they say, you know what, you can use my stuff, you can use my art, you can be inspired by this, you can use it as a reference, take it, learn from it, do more creative stuff. So you should do this. I do the same. I'm being inspired, I'm using a lot of things as references, but I always mention this. I always mention an author. So if I generate something or if I create something, I always say I was inspired by this person, or I was inspired by works of this person. So it's about credibility, right? So I do give credits to the other person. I don't say that this is fully my idea, because I think that's how it should work. If we want to inspire other people and create more things, we want to make sure that all those things are happening in a fair way. AI-generated artworks cannot be copyrighted because they lack human authorship. So that's the conclusion for this topic. If you generate a picture, you cannot copyright it. It's not yours, because it doesn't have a human authorship. It was generated based on data sets. So, and also you cannot spread the authorship across many people, like all contributors. So that was the decision that was taken in 2023 by federal ruling and that made this statement. So there are some ways how can you protect artistic work. And there is an opting out, which is basically utilizing tools and platforms to allow artists to exclude their works from AI training datasets. Next one is, of course, copywriting. So you can officially register your artworks. Everything that I do, because I create physical art pieces, and the generative aspect of it lays on the level of like configurations and some values. So I do register it as my artworks. I have official documents stating that this is my artwork, that I'm an author, and it's unique. So copyright can help you to protect your information, but also receive certain credibility for this. And then there is robots.txt. It's a basically standard that can be implemented on some websites to prevent web crawlers from accessing and scraping your images. So if you do have image library, if you do have your portfolio, you might want to introduce this. Now let's talk a couple of minutes about social manipulation and misinformation. So with this said, I think this is such an obvious topic, and we all know how harmful could it be, especially when it comes to social manipulation, when it comes to elections. So social manipulations are very dangerous, especially in election topic. So this is one of the news about deepfakes you can see. So in 2024 presidential election cycle will be among the first where AI technology has almost gotten good enough to pass off as a politician without easy detection. So I found it quite funny. So 2024, it was 2 years back, we already had cases like this. And taking into account that AI growing exponentially, it's not going to take another 2 years before we will get a news about successful cases like that. Voting rights groups worry that AI models are generating inaccurate and misleading responses in Spanish. So that was another case of manipulation. When it comes to languages, I mean, English is not my first language, right? Not even second language. Probably not even third language that I tried to learn. So when it comes to languages, there is a lot of space for manipulation, and especially when it comes to translations. So that's what it is about. The same group, well, the same region was targeted by with inaccurate information that was like in different language. So in English, they were posting real news and real things that were happening during the voting campaigns. And then in Spanish, they were intentionally translating it, adding some misguidance and misinformation so they can target a minority, a Spanish-speaking minority. That was a real case that happened after this became known, because I mean, some people speak both languages. Probably they just saw some differences in the information when this happened, and they started checking it, and the percentage of fake information was very high, and that raised a really big concern in some communities. So there is also, I mean, of course, I cannot miss that part, AI-driven disinformation campaign on Twitter in the Russia-Ukraine war. That's a very close topic to me, and I keep seeing more and more of those things. So I see it as and it was in 2025, so last year, not that far, and I keep seeing a lot of those, a lot of misinformation being created by AI, generated by AI. I love technology. I am a software developer for more than 10 years, right? I always loved learning new things, and I was always the one who say, we have to try new things, we have to integrate it as soon as possible, we have to do this and that. But now, especially that such thing happening at my home work, I'm not gonna say that I am against it, but I do see how, like, the impact it does, especially with the misinformation. Some of my friends from Ukraine, they don't speak English that well, so they don't have access to news like from other countries. I mean, and to be honest, a lot of content is being filtered and blocked out. When I'm in Ukraine, I just simply cannot access a lot of resources. So I sometimes Google in German, sometimes I Google in English, and I really have troubles accessing the same resources as I can access when I'm physically in Germany. I know about existence of VPN and such tools, but I'm just telling that one way is that they manipulate and they filter out content, and another way that they produce and generate. By they, I can say anyone. It can be other people, it can be, I mean, some hired persons, that it can be, I mean, even government. They generate like the false information, and they also spread it. And AI is helping a lot in these cases. Another case of misinformation, this is a Hurricane Helene case. Two similar photos of a child holding a puppy. I mean, you can see that it's generated, right? But like 2 or 3 years ago, you wouldn't say, I mean, especially when you just scroll the news and then you see it on your phone, it's not a very big picture, you wouldn't tell the difference. There was like 2 pictures, the same girl holding puppy, 2 pictures posted on the internet when this incident happened. It was a tragedy it's a hurricane, a lot of people died, a lot of people suffered. A lot of people were triggered by this image because some of them lost families and kids. And then this child was holding a puppy. You can see that there is misplaced fingers. How they realized that someone generated this image and posted it was a fake news that the kid was like suffered from this disaster, because the image, the second image, was exactly the same, but the color of shirt was different. And then so it took some time to find some fake images, but you can imagine the impact. It had immediate impact when it was posted on some people, how, I mean, the emotional impact and the mental impact it had. And some people did it on purpose. They found it funny in a moment to generate pictures like this, just simply because they had access to tools. it is also aspect of ethics in AI and responsibility that we hold for things we generate. Also, another impact that it has on young generations. This is basically the stereotypes that are being built. If you ask AI, like ChatGPT, like generate me a picture of an influencer or blog like the woman that has its own personal blog or personal brand, you will often get images like that, especially when it comes to female influencer, then it's going to be picture like this. And then some countries, some companies, they use it. And that's the impact that it has on younger generations. They use it, and there was the toy kit released an influencer kit. So they teach small kids from very early age that they have to be influencers, that they have to be like this, they have to, how pretty they have to be, that's how much makeup they have to put, and they have to walk with this stick, they have to make pictures, document every part of their life. This is impact that we have because of this twisted norms that we have, because of those twisted information that we have all the time on the internet. I mean, if you go there on the internet, there is so much fake, and like I grew up without phones, so when I was growing, I didn't have phone. I do remember that the first phone I had, it was Nokia, like black and white. The only game that we had was Snake. So I do still remember those times, and I'm 31. Younger generations, they don't. They just like the whole time with the phone, and everything that they consume, I mean, I don't know numbers, but I can assume that maybe half of this information is being either fake or generated or completely like nonsense. And that's what they consume, what they build themselves, their identities from. So when it comes to the danger of AI, surveillance also creates a very big risk. I mean, there is 1 billion surveillance cameras that are spying all over the world right now. Maybe now the number grew even bigger because that was from 2023. And more than half of them, who can guess where? Who knows the answer? Where the half of cameras are? Yes, you knew this. Half of them are in China. They like looking at people from all the different angles. They gather all this data. And who processes the data that are being gathered from those cameras? Not humans. They deployed AI systems that gather information and they analyze it and process it. And I hope China is good enough to actually make it in a proper way. But in America, there were a lot of cases when the pregnant woman on like 9 months with 2 kids was arrested in the morning because AI system that they have said that 2 hours back, she stole a car from someone or she kidnapped someone. So those ridiculous cases happen, and that's one of the examples when it's not being correctly used. So robots tend to replace manual labors while artificial intelligence threatens knowledge workers. We all know this topic. We all say, oh my God, AI will replace us. We will not write code anymore. But that's not true, because this happened before. By 2025, machines could displace about 85 million jobs, but they created 97 million jobs that happened before in the previous like technological and industrial revolutions. So the last topic, real quick. Well, not the last topic, but just to summarize it, when it comes to job displacement, we are talking, of course, about machine learning is the key component that transformed the workspace. It's robotics that simplifies all the manufacturers and all the factories and makes our life simpler, so we can do some other things instead of just manual labor. And then there is a natural language processing, which is also has a very important role because it changes how we basically communicate with machines and introducing new jobs in the sectors. Last topic, and I have like 30 seconds. Well, I hope all of you are fine if I take 1 minute. It's a lethal autonomous weapon systems. There is a lot of ethical concerns arising around this, but this is also something inevitable, especially now that we are living already 4 years in the wartime. In my country, we're using drones widely, just simply because we don't have much choices to how to defend ourselves. And when it comes to drones, autonomy is also a very important aspect because, I mean, my friend, I don't want to be very sad, but my friend was a drone operator, and I say was for the reason, so you can imagine. So I will be very happy that if this could be automated for bad reasons, because it can be it's a part of war, and it causes people to die. But this is something that we cannot avoid. The only thing that we can do, especially as specialists leading technology, make sure that we put enough effort and put enough energy to make those systems safe so they don't fly in a civilian building or something like this. So that's the only thing that I can say. I don't want to talk too much about this, especially because of the background that I'm coming from Ukraine. I don't want to make it finish with a negative direction. So instead, I will finish with a little joke that no technology since the atomic bomb has inspired the apocalyptic imagination like artificial intelligence, right? There are more movies about artificial intelligence taking all over the world than ending it with a nuclear or atomic bomb. So how badly things could go wrong if an emerging intelligence comes to understand the world and its own goals, even slightly different from how human creators do. So one scenario, of course, requires less imagination because the first step towards it was arguably already been taken, and the gradual integration of AI systems into destructive technologies are already happening. So never give artificial intelligence nuclear codes. So this was, I find it funny. It's just an article that also talks about the safe usage of artificial intelligence. Yeah, but we have to be aware of that. And especially even in the last couple of days or weeks, I saw quite disturbing news about autonomous weaponry as well. So with that said, thank you very much for listening. First session of the morning. I can imagine that some of you are quite tired. I still need my morning coffee. So big thank you for coming. If you have any questions or comments, I'm going to be still here around. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Okay, thank you very much, Olena, for this inspiring talk. Can I say one question from this online session?
Yeah.
Okay, it's about that bias in stable diffusion. They are from year 2023, and the question is about newer generative models. If you know about any, if the degree of bias degrees increase or not change.
So about stable diffusion was released in 21-22. I checked yesterday. It was like 4 years ago. And the question was if there are new models that were, if they were released and if the amount of bias decreased, right? I mean, in this case, I know that the new tools were released. I'm not sure about the name, but I know that I don't know about exact bias in training data, but I know that some rules and guardrails were integrated in the tools as well, itself. So if before, in the first days, it was Midjourney or, I mean, even DALL-E, you could have generated more harmful, like not harmful, but you had less restrictions on what to generate. And now, if you use the same tool, for example, ChatGPT to generate a picture, you will have a lot of limitations. So talking about stable diffusion, I will not name an alternative right now, the newer one, but I know that people and companies are working intensively to make sure that people don't misuse it, because of all the cases also I was mentioning before.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much as well.